All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. Welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. To my regular listeners, you know what to expect. We are here again, back 2025. Nothing has actually changed. We're just doing what we normally do, giving you gems, bringing people on the show that have an unbelievable story and are here to serve you, here to help you. So tune in very, very closely. I have Craig Andrews, who is the founder of Allies for Me, and he is all about one of my favorite topics, actually, in terms of developing a high ticket sales strategy. But Craig, I don't normally do this, but I want to read off. You have on your website, you have it where you have speaking topics, and I loved it so much that I want to read off of it like directly. It says speaker, marketer, writer, and always a Marine, baby, always a Marine. So I
Semper
think that,
Fi.
yeah, I think it's best to just start off, during your time in the Marine, what made you enroll. Just talk a little bit about your background, and then we could talk about how things develop from there. But you give credit to the Marine. I'm assuming that because of the discipline and because of the structure it gave you and the mindset it gave you. So I think that's the best place to start off today. So the floor is yours, man.
Yeah, no. So uh, nobody ever accused me of being a model student in high school.
Oh, likewise,
And
likewise. Likewise. I mean, man, if we start there, then I'd probably keep going for another couple of hours just by going off high school stuff alone. It wasn't, they don't teach leaders. They don't teach, people that have the kind of thinking of entrepreneurial. It really can be a lonely place when in that environment. So anyway, go ahead. By the way, that happens on the show. I might get a little excited and cut you off, but just keep rolling. We keep it organic here.
no, it's great. And yeah, so anyway, at some point I realized my GPA wouldn't get me into any university anybody had ever heard of.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed to do something different. And so I went around to different recruiters. The Air Force recruiter never returned my phone call. The Navy recruiter was a fat slob. The Army recruiter looked like he could get his butt kicked by some 12-year-old bully, around the block.
No, what,
And
Texas, all this?
no, I grew up in Maryland. I grew up in Maryland,
No shit. What part?
Eastern Shore, Maryland, Cambridge.
I'm from Silver Spring. Grew up in Silver Spring,
Oh,
man. There you
yeah, no,
I had no idea.
yeah, no. I love driving around the Beltway, and you see the Mormon Tabernacle come
Yeah.
up, and every now and then they spray paint on the overpass, save Dorothy or something like that.
There you go. What high school did you go to?
So I went to Cambridge South Dorchester High School. In Dorchester County, there's only two high schools, one for the north side of the county, one for the south side.
Was it Y High or something like that near Salisbury?
No. I mean,
Oh,
Salisbury is like another half hour,
oh,
45 minutes away.
right. That was before. So I got you. Yeah, because I'd go to Ocean City and all that stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so when you're going to Ocean City, of course you cross the Bay Bridge.
hmm,
The next bridge you cross takes you into Cambridge, my hometown.
got it. Got it.
So yeah, but anyway, yeah, I mean, I just reached a point where I was wanting to do something. I knew I needed to make a change in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I met the Marine recruiter who was first great sales guy of my life. I went in there, I thought, yeah, I'm going to sign up for 3 years, kind of get a new mindset, get a little bit, turn around. The dude ended up signing me up for 6 years. And he was force recon. I mean, he just grizzled. And so I went in, and it was nothing what I was expecting. And but it was incredibly awesome, far more awesome than I could have ever predicted. The Marines I served with were amazing, smart poets. I mean, seriously, they were poets. Um, and it was a blast. It was six
Mm-hmm.
wonderful, wonderful years.
Mm-hmm.
And I never intended to stay in. And I got out and went to university. But it's I credit the Marine Corps for just a lot in life. One of the things, they push you to a point. They push you to a point where you think you can't go, and then they push you a little bit further, and you start discovering that you're capable of things that you
Hmm.
just you would have never dreamed of.
Right.
And yeah, I think of one example from boot camp. It was third phase of boot camp. This would have been August in Paris Island, South Carolina, hot, humid,
Hmm.
nasty. And we were doing a 10-mile forced march. And
Right.
I won't describe it, but it was torture. It was
Right.
absolute torture. And we're on the first half of that forced march, and I'm just dying of thirst. Well, you don't do anything in the Marine Corps unless, especially in boot camp, unless you're told to, let alone drink water. You know,
Hmm.
none of this, hey, if you're thirsty, drink. And so about starting around mile 3, I start fantasizing about when they eventually give the order to drink water.
Hmm.
And I'm trying to figure out how to drink as much as I can. We finally get to the 5-mile point. We do 5 just brutal miles, not allowed to drink anything. We get to the 5-mile point and they give the order to drink. I grab a canteen, I throw it back, and I just start throat drinking this canteen. I get it halfway down and I realize, holy crap, that's full of stagnant water.
Hmm.
I'd filled the canteen a week earlier, but I hadn't used it.
Right.
And it was dirty and it just got stagnant. It got nasty.
Right.
Well, I still have another 5 miles in the South Carolina heat to go.
Hmm.
And that stagnant water starts churning in my stomach. And I start seeing colors. And in boot camp's not an environment where you can say, hey, my tummy hurts. Do you mind if I take a break?
That is not the
Um,
environment. No.
and so I decide, okay, one, two things is going to happen. I'm just going to keep marching until I pass out and I face plant into the deck,
Hmm.
and somebody will bring me back to the barracks, or I'll make it back to the barracks. I actually made it back to the barracks,
Hmm.
but I mean, it was 2 to 3 miles of just like borderline. I mean, just really on the edge, seeing colors, not you know dizzy, just not sure if I can make it, and just continuing to push.
Right.
And that's something few people ever get to experience,
Right.
and they never get to discover what they're capable of.
Right. So, okay, you said 6 years you were doing that, and then after, was it directly in the business? And I believe you said you did some engineering work as well. Like, what happened once you were able to get those lessons? And by the way, well, first of all, I don't want to brush over how important those lessons actually are, because you just said it. So many of you, especially listeners, are right now. It's important to embrace, those tough times, because it builds those habits. Like the way I'm just sitting here listening to you, the way you recollected that story is as if it happened yesterday, as if it was something that you can actually feel and taste, and you can, go down the hill, you actually can see it in your face, and it still pushes you to this day. So, when you got out, what was the mentality like? What were some of the challenges? What was your mindset given those lessons that you had, and then how you apply it to the work you're doing, or the work you started to develop doing?
Yeah, so I always wanted to go to college, and
Mm-hmm.
I was stationed primarily out of Cherry Point, North Carolina. I deploy over to Asia a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got out, I went to North Carolina State University, and I thought, hey,
Wolfpack?
yeah,
All right.
I was like, I want to build things. I want to be creative.
Uh-huh.
And so I thought that's what engineers do. So I went off and I got an engineering degree,
All right.
uh, landed a real nice job designing cell phones, mobile phones back in the 1990s. And
Really? The flip phone,
yeah, yeah,
you're a flip phone guy. That's back when flip phones actually existed. Yes, back in those days. So you were one of
yep.
the guys that designed it also.
And while I was doing that, I even got my master's degree in electrical engineering, and I discovered engineering is not a place that rewards creativity. They don't like creative people there. I did well. I got promotions and what have you, but I wasn't happy. And so I
Okay,
was
wait,
like,
I gotta you gotta fill us in on that. So engineering of all places didn't reward creativity. Can you kind of elaborate? Because that you just kind of taught me something. I would think that would be a place where creativity is something welcome.
yeah. So here's the thing. And it's funny. I was talking to a financial advisor I know here in Austin,
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Oh, I don't work with engineers because they never make decisions." I'm
Mm,
like, "That's not true." I said, we're sitting here, we're having coffee. You got in a car, you drove down roads, you crossed bridges to meet me here.
mm-hmm.
None of that would have happened if engineers didn't make
Make
decisions.
decisions on the, yeah, exactly.
So here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
When engineers make bad decisions, either people die or it costs millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm. Just like,
And
well,
so,
you're from Maryland, so you heard about that bridge collapsing, right?
oh yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
it's prime example. It's gonna take years, like years, to just begin the construction on that thing to rebuild it.
yeah. And that's the thing. If you're a civil engineer and you're designing bridges and what have you,
Mm-hmm.
you get the design wrong, people die.
Yeah.
Um, and in the mobile phone industry, if you go off and you do something risky and anything creative looks risky to them,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to cost the company millions of dollars.
Right.
And so they don't want that. They want yeah, they want very safe decisions. And so
Mm.
that's that's kind of the training of that environment. And if
Right.
and so engineers end up
Yeah,
becoming very risk averse.
yeah,
Well,
that makes sense
if
now.
you're somebody who likes risk, which a lot of entrepreneurs do,
Right. Yeah.
it's a stifling environment.
It is. And that, I mean, I'm glad you broke it down for me like that, not just for me, but for the listeners as well. Because, Mike, if you're a listener like me, you may have walked in or listened to this interview thinking that engineering is the creative niche, but you're 1000% right. One wrong decision, lives get lost, and millions of dollars are lost. And you can't fuck around with that. You got to make sure the situation is exactly the way it's supposed to be. And for your mindset, having learned that, but having been the entrepreneur at heart, I can already feel where you're kind of going with that because that's a dilemma. You know, your mindset is let's make some risk, let's make some money, let's actually do something as opposed to spending 8 hours a day just doing the typical making sure everything is on point. Eyes are like the basic stuff. So, kind of walk us through how you were able to move through that challenge and kind of fight that scratch that entrepreneurial itch that I'm already feeling in you as I'm talking to you because all the entrepreneurs have it when they start to feel that entrepreneur interest. This is getting too tedious, it's getting too comfortable. Give me some risk, man. So walk me through that when you kind of had that breakthrough.
Yeah. So my next step was I thought, well, let me try marketing. And so I ended up marketing semiconductors, chips for mobile phones.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for about a decade. And that was great because that gave me,
Mm-hmm.
that helped scratch that itch in part. And I got to do some really, really cool things. Um, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I'll tell you, I remember, so I had a product that I was launching
Mm-hmm.
and it was a great product. The engineer on it it was great. He's a friend to this day. And he made this brilliant product. And, and I had to design the launch package for it, how we would take it to market.
Mm-hmm.
And it knocked our competition flat-footed for 2 years straight. But I
Mm-hmm.
remember kind of early in the launch, the sales guys were freaking out. They come up to me. They're like they were always freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
But they come up to me one day. They're like, Craig, Connexent, who was our competitor at the time, they're out talking to our customers and they're telling our customers that this product is risky and they're endangering their careers and all this, that, and the other if they use our product because it was a game changer. Our product really was a game changer.
Right.
And I looked at the sales guys and I was like, guys, that is awesome, awesome news.
Mm-hmm.
And they looked at me like I had two heads. They're like, what in the heck are you talking about? I said, guys, we have earned the right to be bashed.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason they're out there saying that is because we are a threat to them. We've scared
Right.
them.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, give me a couple days. I'll work on a response to that. And I
Right.
did. I took it back to them. They were all too chicken to go out and do it. And so I went on the road, flew out to Taiwan, and I was meeting with this engineer named Eric Hu.
Mm-hmm.
And during our meeting, he brings up with me, he's like, hey, Connexent has been here and they've been talking about your product.
Mm-hmm.
And they tell me I should be very, very worried. And I said, Eric, I said, I've heard this. I said, you're not the only one they've told this to. They've been telling this to a lot of people.
Right.
I said, the one thing I haven't been able to figure out is what they're concerned about. I hear them say to be concerned, but they don't tell me, they're not telling anybody what to be concerned about. I said, would you mind going back and asking them what their concerns are?
Mm-hmm.
Let me know, and I will make sure we address every single one of your concerns because I want you to be comfortable about this.
Mm-hmm.
That shut them up for 9 months because what I did was I knew they didn't have anything to go off of.
Mm-hmm.
They were just spreading FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was the strategy I told the sales guys. I was like, we're going to steal their credibility. We're going to ask customers, we're going to empathize with them, say, hey, we don't want you to worry. We're hearing that. Can you get details? Because we want to make sure we address your concerns.
Right.
As soon as they took that back to our competitor looked like an idiot because they were all of a sudden their mask was taken off
Mm-hmm.
and they lost all credibility in front of the customer.
Right.
And it shut them up for 9 months. They came back 9 months later with a smarter response, and we had to respond to that. But that was the type of thing, that was the type of fun and excitement that you didn't get in engineering.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. And I was happy to stay in that career for years, but the margin pressure
Mm-hmm.
was just insane. And I knew the day was coming when they were going to ask me to fly coach to Asia. And I knew that when that day came, I was done. And sure enough, it came. I was like, sorry, I flew to Asia 4 or 5 times a year. I'm like, sorry, I'm not going to fly a coach to Asia 4 or 5 times a year. Just
Mm-hmm.
not going to do it. So you guys can make millions of dollars. And so
Mm.
that's when I went off and started my own business, which became Allies for me.
Okay,
And let me,
there's a lot I want to unpack with what you said, what you just said, because again, actually a previous guest that we just had on spoke to the listeners and myself about the importance of learning sales as a trait, making sure selling is something that you're constantly practicing and you're constantly doing. And he spoke about confidence and actually making sure that you're confident in your product. So when you transitioned to marketing, what was that transition actually like? What were some of the things that you had to do? Did it just, hey, wake, you woke up one morning and said, look, I'm just going to do marketing now. And then you got into it. How was that transition? And then eventually, obviously, you led to you running your own thing. But I think that transition is important for listeners to know as well.
yeah, so I changed jobs. I was with Ericsson. I was designing mobile phones for Ericsson,
Right.
and I left and I joined one of their suppliers.
Oh,
To
right.
and and the thing is, in the semiconductor world, nobody they don't hire anybody with a marketing degree.
Mm-hmm.
The only people that do marketing in that world are engineers.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You do both.
that's good and bad. The good is that you know they generally know what they're talking about. The bad is um, the the quality of the marketing in the mobile phone industry is not that in the semiconductor and a lot of the tech space is just not
Mm-hmm.
that good.
Right.
And so they missed out on a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I figured out a few things, luckily. And part of putting that launch package together, I studied Hewlett Packard. I noticed
Yes.
how Hewlett Packard had just done such an incredible job. They were always the one that got the phone call when you needed a piece of test equipment back when they made
Mm-hmm.
test equipment.
Right.
And I just started asking, how do they do this? And I just kind of started breaking it down and realized the thing that made Hewlett Packard did to make sure they were the first one to get the phone call. It wasn't about building a better product. It was about other factors, about serving the needs of their customers, which were engineers.
Yes. Yes.
And it came down to this: Hewlett Packard, they were always giving free training that would make you better engineers. And engineers have off the chart needs for competency.
Right.
And so they were meeting that need. And then they were providing tools that help the engineers be better at their work. And they did that better than any of their competitors. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why they were the first one to get the phone call. And I was like,
Right.
well, we have a killer part here, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to market on the merits of the part. I'm going to market on the intrinsic needs of the people who are going to decide to buy our part.
Yes. Yes. And that I'm glad you said that because, like I said, like I was telling you before we started recording, I was listening to you on previous shows, and you did a great job, especially when you started talking high ticket strategy and developing clients. Like one of the things I always say is, you want to develop clients, you want to develop relationships with clients, not necessarily customers, right? So when you start Allies for Me, do you create a framework in which people are now looking more on the intrinsic value of the customer so they become clients, or you do a great job in making the distinction between intrinsic and extrinsic value. You can go kind of share a little bit about your philosophy when it comes to that.
Yeah, and I wish I could say it was a nice, smooth transition.
They
I mean,
never are. They never are. You gotta feel it, man. You gotta be in it, and you gotta have the conversation. You gotta go out and get it, man.
I stepped on the rake more times than I can count. And and the thing is, when somebody would hire us,
Yeah.
we'd move the needle for them in big ways. I mean,
Mhm.
we've made huge impacts in people's businesses. But the thing that I noticed was I suck at sales. I mean, I'll just be honest. I suck at sales, and I took the classes and did all the things, and I was never any good at it. And I realized at some point, I was like, okay, I need another strategy.
Mhm.
And I came up with this. I remember having this moment of clarity, and I realized that a powerful offer, or a
Mhm.
weak offer can't overcome the best sales conversation. But a powerful offer can overcome a horrible sales conversation. And I realized, you know what? I need to work on building better offers
Mm.
and let the offer do the heavy lifting.
Mhm.
And when you break it down, this comes back to what you were talking about. When you break down, when you get the offer right, you're actually addressing people's intrinsic needs.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, you're not having to sell. When you start meeting people's intrinsic needs, they feel good. It starts the offers that we do, we call them first time offers.
Mhm.
One of the things they do is it causes the release of oxytocin in the body.
Mhm.
Oxytocin is the bonding hormone that bonds baby to mother.
Mhm.
And and when we do this and we cause this release of oxytocin, people just start feeling bound to us, and they're like, "Hey, I just want to work with you."
Mhm.
And but it's because we met some intrinsic needs.
Mhm.
The reality is there's a lot of people that can do what we do. I mean, obviously, I think when it comes to the high ticket stuff,
Mhm.
I feel like we do a very good job. But at the same time, there's a lot of marketers out there. There's a lot of talented marketers. And so it's when you're trying to differentiate yourself,
Mhm.
you have to, it can be hard. And here's one of the things that's really interesting. If you're doing high ticket work, if you're doing a high ticket service,
Mhm.
your customers, your clients are not qualified to choose you over your competition. They will,
Mhm.
but they're not qualified. The reason they're hiring you is you understand the small stuff that matters.
Mhm.
But the buying decision is in the hands of somebody that doesn't understand what you uniquely bring to that situation.
Right.
What a lot of people try to do in at that point is they think, okay, I'm going to educate them on these small little details. Well, one, they don't want to be educated on those small little details. And two, it's probably going to be hard to bring them up to a competent level to understand the nuanced differences.
Mhm.
And so that doesn't work. I've tried. That's
Yeah.
some of the stepping on the rake.
Right.
And so it's more about starting to address some of those intrinsic needs.
Right.
And when you do that, then they start choosing you.
And that actually doing that and understanding that is actually going to lead to your confidence, listeners, the ones that are really do want to develop a high ticket offer. When you know these little things that they're missing and you see it, you can charge more, because when you face that reality, like you said, and I love how you just say, look, you're not going to educate these people, these potential clients, because they don't want to be educated. They're considering a high ticket offer so they can pay somebody to think about all the other little things that you already know. Now you lean into your craft a whole lot more fully. You do a lot more detail work on learning what it is you want to offer, and then you could boldly and confidently make that offer, knowing that you know your stuff. So it really boils down to, like you said, not necessarily being a great salesman, because you just said it, but one of the things that actually attracted me to your profile on Podmatch was, you create environments in which you can sell. So by creating the environment and then really focusing on your offer, then you could quote, I hate to use this phrase, but you could make it rain. You can make it rain because you know exactly who you're offering, who's your target, and then you're confident enough to offer that price. If you're not turning some people away because your prices are too high, that means you're not digging deep enough into what it is you're trying to do, and you're not really focusing on your craft. And this is very important. And I want to make sure we get to this because life is unpredictable, right? And you actually went through a situation during the coronavirus that you didn't know. I mean, I think it's a blessing that you were able to do the amount of shows that you've done, your stories out there, because you were told, you actually, the way you described it is the doctor actually told your wife, look, he's a goner. And now you're here, you're thriving, you're moving forward. I'd love for you to kind of talk a little bit about that, so people understand the importance of developing that high ticket offer. You don't have unlimited time here. You never know when shit happens, and you never know when you're going to be needed or you're going to be there for loved ones. So, the floor is yours to kind of speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, so my wife and I woke up sick July 31st, 2021. And we were both sick in a bad way. And I remember it was Friday, about a week later.
Mm-hmm.
What Friday afternoon, I just kind of sprung up out of bed. I was like, oh, I finally knocked it. And I thought I was over it.
Mm-hmm.
And by Monday, I was walking into the hospital saying, I can't breathe.
Hmm.
And they immediately put me on oxygen, um, and that was August 10th. And then it was 12 days later, in the middle of the night, on August 22nd, they called my wife, and they kind of manipulated her. I'm a little upset with them about this. They had shot me full of morphine and told her I wasn't competent to make the decision. She heard me screaming, "No ventilator, no ventilator," in the
Oh my
background.
God.
They said, if you don't put him on the ventilator, he'll be dead in 24 hours. And she
Oh,
said, well, how many have you had to survive the ventilator? And they said, none have survived.
oh,
She's like, you've given me an impossible decision. They're like, and they really did. They bullied her into putting me on the ventilator.
yeah.
And so it was lights out for me. And I spent 25 days on the ventilator the first time. And I was in a coma for about a total of 6 weeks. And it
Wow.
was real. It was a wild time. I had a whole bunch of dreams. And I use the term dreams just because I don't have a better phrase to describe what they were, but it
Yeah.
was sort of a transient state halfway between the real world and where I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so the real world came into my dreams.
Hmm.
And the early dreams greatly divorced from reality. So I was driving exotic cars. I got to drive Michael Jordan's Ferrari. Almost got arrested for Grand Theft Auto. So this was what's going on. But as the dreams progressed, the real world started leaking in
Mm-hmm.
and showing itself. And 6 weeks later, I woke up, and it was actually 5 weeks into the coma before the first doctor ever told my wife. He said, "I think your husband may live." He didn't say, "I think your husband will live." He said, "I think your husband may live." It took 5 weeks for a doctor just to tell her that.
Wow.
And um, and even then it was close, but
Okay.
woke up, and for about a week or so, I don't know, I have a weird sense of time there.
Mm-hmm.
I had a trach when I woke up, and so I couldn't talk.
Hmm.
Um, but when they took the trach out and I started talking, I noticed that everybody around me, I would start talking about things that had happened, and they'd look at me like I was a little weird.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one afternoon, my brother and his wife had come to sit with me when my wife couldn't,
Right.
and my brother was making conversation, and he said something about his last trip to my house. Well, in my world, he had never been to my house. And at this point, I realized, okay, I believe a lot of things that nobody else believes. I was like, I think I've lost my mind.
Hmm.
And if I let them know that I've lost my mind, they're going to take away privileges. So I got a little scared. And I looked at my brother and I said, well, when was the last time you were at my house? He said, last month when you were on the ventilator.
Hmm.
I said, well, tell me about your visit. And I got him to start talking about his visit,
Hmm.
but my purpose was to get him to tell me about my house.
Hmm.
And what had happened, I'd been living in that house 17 years at that point, and I'd completely forgotten about the house.
Hmm.
I believed I lived in a different house, a fictitious house that doesn't even exist. And I'd completely forgotten about my house in 17 years. But as he started talking, I started realizing that I started remembering the house. And I can picture it to this day. As he was talking, it was like I was walking down the cul-de-sac and I
Hmm.
see the front of the house and I come in the front door and I start looking around the house. Then I walk through the house and we back up to a nature preserve
Hmm.
and I start picturing the preserve and that was when I started remembering my house.
Hmm.
And it was like a day or two later, I called my wife over to the side of the bed and I said, hey, I'm going to tell you some things and I need you to tell me if these things ever happened.
Hmm.
And I just started going through a bunch of things. And sure enough, most of what I believed about reality was false.
Hmm.
It was a wild, wild time.
Hmm.
But there were some really interesting things that happened. So let me tie this back to marketing.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things I noticed when I woke up is after 6 weeks in the coma, my trust in the doctors had plummeted.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
it just,
you just said they bullied your wife. I mean, well, before you go further, I want to make sure we shout out the wifey on this. I know that that could not have nearly at all been an easy time for her, and for her to kind of hold it down per se during that time. Got to shout out wifey on that, man. That's incredible strength, incredible just resilience to keep going and believing, because I can only imagine what she was probably going through during that specific time. So.
she was incredible. I
Mhm.
mean, she was absolutely incredible.
Right.
Yeah, and this was during COVID. They weren't letting family
Exactly.
members in
Nobody
the
was
hospital.
around. Yeah, it was hard to get anything going. No, everything was shut down.
Yeah, well, she went up to him. She said, "Well, I'm coming to visit." They're like, "No, you're not." And she's like, "Wrong answer." And she actually,
Put her foot down.
uh, she put her foot down, and the agreement was they would give her an hour a day.
Yeah. That's it.
And so,
Yeah, you got to negotiate, and you're about to tie it into marketing, so it's a good negotiate.
yeah. Well, she'd come in, and
Hmm.
for an hour a day, she would sing to me, and she'd pray over me, and she'd say words of encouragement.
Right.
And what was interesting is when I woke up, my trust in the doctors had absolutely plummeted,
Hmm.
fallen through the floor. My trust in my wife had gone through the roof.
Yeah.
And so the doctors would come and they'd want to do some procedure. And all I knew, I mean, my brains were scrambled when I first woke up. And all I knew was I didn't trust them. So I'd say no. And so they would have to go talk to her.
Hmm. Hmm.
And she'd say, well,
Right.
the doctors want to do something. I'd ask her, is it safe? And she said, yeah. I was
Mm.
like, okay. And it hit me. It's kind of like Maya Angelou had a quote. She said, "People will remember. They'll forget what you said. They will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you
How you
made them."
made them feel.
And what happened? Remember, I said the real world was leaking into my dreams.
Hmm.
In one of my dreams, and this is very, very tightly, and I can tell you exactly which day this happened on.
Right.
This dream happened on September 20th, 2021.
Hmm.
And I believed I was in some weird medical commune in West Virginia
Hmm.
and Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. And it was in a Victorian house with lacy white curtains and yellow tinted lights.
Right.
And my wife comes in, she approaches me on my right hand side. And this is really important because I've been able to, she would almost always visit me on my left. And I asked her, I said, on this day, which side did you visit? And she's like, I visited on your right.
Hmm.
I said, yeah. I said, here's what happened. You came in and I looked up at you and I said, you've got to get me out of here. What's happening here is not good.
Mhm.
And so I heard, and I've actually repeated back to my wife
Mhm.
things that I said in my, or things that she said to me in my coma.
Mhm.
And so I was hearing the messages from the medical staff. I was hearing messages from her.
Mhm.
And what had happened was they both created experiences for me. The doctors created an experience where I didn't trust them at all.
Mhm.
My wife created experiences where my trust just went through the roof.
Mhm.
And remember I said that when we design an offer,
Yeah.
it causes a release of oxytocin in the
Yeah.
body.
Yeah.
The offers that we design are structured in a way where you create experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And like Maya Angelou said, they will never forget how you made them feel.
Wow. Wow. I'm moved right now, man. I can relate in so many ways, but I want to make sure I'm translating that for the listeners as well. Is whenever it's the old saying, it's darkest before the dawn. Whenever you are rock bottom and something unfortunate happens, stay in that moment, understand the feeling of that moment, really kind of reside in that moment, because it's going to be those feelings that give you clarity for the future. And you just described the situation so beautifully, so eloquently in regards to, here is someone who face value we're going to trust regardless, because they're a doctor, because of what you did in school, because of what is said on paper, but because of the way you treated people, right? The way you made her feel, the way you kind of bullied her into making her feel like her husband was gonna pass away. Your trust issues now were more so, my wife is who I can trust, and the what the world says is not what I'm gonna trust. And that ultimately led into your business plan, that led into how you serve people, that led into what you make the offers all about. And that I think that's an amazing, just amazing way of coming out of a situation that was incredibly, had to be incredibly tough. And as a listener, that's how you got to be thinking. All right. And it goes back to some of our previous points in regards to, you don't have to be a great salesman. You don't have to have necessarily the gift of gab. You have to just genuinely give a shit about people and give a shit about how you're making a person feel when they come into your world, and what offers and what things are you creating for them. That is so important. If you get a hold of that, I guarantee you 2025 is going to be an incredible, 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 incredible year for you. So, with all that being said, I do want to be very respectful of your time. I appreciate you sharing and being so transparent. Can you just speak on allies for you? Speak on the company, what's next, how can people get in touch with you if they want to kind of hear more about your journey and get involved with what you're doing? The floor is yours to speak.
Yeah, so I've got two books out. One is called Make Sales Magical, that talks about how to build these
That's
type
great.
of
That's a
offers.
hell of a title. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and so for those that are watching, there's that book, Make Sales
Nice.
Magical. And then my wife and I co-authored a book called Hope That Won't Die.
Oh, okay.
And
Documented. Okay.
it's about, it's about our journey and what we learned. And so I'd love for people to read those.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Allies for me, we if you have a high ticket service with a long sales cycle that requires a high level of trust, and especially if you're in a commoditized market, meaning there's a lot of people that basically provide the same service as you,
Mm-hmm.
we've got a formula that will change your life.
Mm-hmm.
And love for you to reach out. But actually, I have a free gift for your audience, two free gifts. And
Hey now, we love those. Happy New Year, folks.
so one is a guide on how to build first time offers.
Mm-hmm.
I made a lot of mistakes building those.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I mean, my first time offer failed. My second first time offer failed. My third first time offer failed a little bit less.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, started figuring it out. And so this guide is going to help you avoid a lot of the painful learning that I had to go through. And the other thing is actually given 23 days to a course. We have a course that anybody can come. And the reason we're doing 23 days
Mm-hmm.
is real simply, we want people to do the course. And I
Mm-hmm.
know enough. We study people, we study how people behave.
Mm-hmm.
And I know if I give unlimited access to the course, people will sign up and they will never do the course their lives will never be changed.
Mm-hmm.
So we put a 23-day limit on there, and we see it in the analytics. People come in, they start consuming the content,
Right.
and they go through it. And that's really what excites us. So if anybody wants that, our website is alliesforme.com.
Mm-hmm.
That's ALLIES, the number 4ME.com. And if they want the free gift, just add a slash at the end, alliesforme.com/move swiftly,
Mm-hmm.
all lowercase, all one word. And that will take them to the page to download that gift.
Well, appreciate the free gift, and we'll make sure we include that in the show notes as well. And it's like you just said, you got to take advantage. You can get all the free gifts in the world. If you don't take advantage of it, if you don't apply it, you're not going to see results. So make sure you take advantage of it, work the system, and make sure you're really getting in touch with what it is and how it is you want to serve people and who it is exactly you do want to serve. So, appreciate the free gift. Appreciate it. I'm sure the listeners will appreciate that as well. So, Craig, the final thing I do with all the shows, the way I close out the show, is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. Pretend the young high school Craig just entered into the Zoom room. He's what, a 2.5, 2.2, barely getting by in high school. Everyone's looking at him like, oh, he's not going to some fancy school, so he's going to be a failure. He's this, he's that. Pretend that young man has come into the Zoom room. Give him some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close.
Yeah, I would say be bold. Be bold.
Yes.
And don't if something ignites your passion,
Yeah.
run for it.
Yeah.
Do it. Be bold.
Yes. Be bold. And if you are in that situation that I just described, he's talking directly to you. Be bold. Do not let that circumstance, that thing that is happening in high school that we've all had to live through, don't get caught up in that circumstance. Understand that it's a big, big, big world out there. I'm talking billions of people out there in which you can be serving, and then you could find your place. Like I think it's Lincoln Park. Find somewhere you belong. All right. All that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.